let's take a look at what we're going to build from a different perspective. Here, I want to look at the different components and also categorize those components into different buckets. The 4 buckets are data source, storage, compute, and consume. In this view, we're really looking at just the components and not necessarily the flow of data from left to right in this diagram. Now, let's go through each of these buckets, starting from the left to the right. On the data source, we have GitHub. And I put GitHub here because all the data that we're going to play around with in this course is going to come from GitHub. I'm essentially going to download the data from GitHub and load it into one of these 3 different storage options. On the storage, we have MySQL DB, Kafka, and HDFS. Let's drill into the Kafka piece and clarify what we mean here. When we think about Kafka, we think about streaming, but Kafka also has a storage where you can set the retention time of the data, and that's what I'm referring to here, the Kafka storage. On the storage, we also have MySQL DB, which is a SQL-based database. And finally, we have HDFS, which is the file system that comes with Hadoop. Let's move on to the next bucket, compute. And by compute, I mean the processing engine that underpins this entire architecture. And in this case, it is Presto. And Presto is an interactive query engine. Now, there are other query engines like Spark, MapReduce from Hadoop, etc. But for this class, we're focusing on Presto. And finally, we have the last bucket called consume. There are 3 different options in here: Presto CLI, Tableau, and RStudio. Now, it's important to note that each of these different consumption options can only get to the storage through Presto.